So for this demo, I had to do it solo. However, each player is playing the game. They're not playing with knowledge of the opponent's cards. I did have to play all players, so I did forget to carry out different actions occasionally, but the gameplay resembles multiple players actually playing, some of them new, some of them not. The cards that are played are displayed to the camera, and most of the video will be self-explanatory with me showcasing a few options. Some sections are skipped, the majority of the game is often skipped, and I did not fully finish the end of the game because it was basically impossible to win from another perspective once the sequence of turns was executed. But forever, most of it is just simply a quick game going through. Some of the cards that went through are the way the deck was shuffled. It kind of caused the game to be finished earlier
I also
than
want to
usual,
mention
but
that I will have
that's just
sparse
about it.
commentary within the video, mostly to explain certain concepts in certain areas where strategy is present. However, it's sort of back and forth, so if there's silence, just feel free to skip around for a bit. But I managed to explain a few concepts here and there. A lot of the actions are annotated through what I show the camera and hand actions. So if I point out numbers, I'm either like multiplying or pointing out certain things. And if my hand makes a slide motion, that means that the card's discarded, to sort of highlight discarding cards that are counter to a main strategy. So here we simply see the execution of the turns from drawing cards to the beginning stages of picking which cards to play. The cards that are played are shown. Notice that for the first few turns, it's a good strategy to just draw whatever you get, not basically pick and choose items. So that is why everyone simply draws too. And the strategy sort of diverge. There's high points, there's low points in the game, but it's basically the first turn, so not much.
So this beginning exchange is a little bit of strategy. It's basically producing oil, trying to raise the oil price, and the next player reducing the oil price and trying to counteract that because they don't have as much oil. So both of these players are trying to counter each other's strategies. This is sort of a way that mechanics and dynamics both sort of overlink. So the first player is trying to capitalize on his advantage, and the second player is trying to negate the advantage. So the capitalizing is sort of not worth it in a sense. The next player, however, has another produced oil, so they're going to try to raise the price. Now we have two people working together to sort of form a strategic goal. So this is an example of like mutual cooperation of I benefit from this, you benefit from this. However, this doesn't exactly pan out for the third player because now the first player has multiplied by 3, so they gain even greater profit from what happened. So in order to help, the original player thought they would benefit equally, but then the first player came back and had a great advantage. So the third player's timing was wrong, but they should basically, if they had known what was in their hand, they would have played differently. So that's an example of like the strategic differences in hand and play style. So here we can see a strategic play. The first player is going to buy more oil drills. Not that the oil price is higher, they can actually afford to produce more oil, which will cause them to reach more profits higher, and hands the cartel to the player that does not have as much oil rather than the other player, so that that cartel advantage that has to be passed on to another player is therefore negated. So here we see an example of a slight combo. The players are going to use the equivalent of Throne Room in Dominion of playing a card twice, drawing a lot of cards because they don't have the most cards right now, and giving them a lot of options what to play. So that's a small example of something like a combo being used, and knowing which cards to play and how to optimize and cover those weak points of and gain, for example, something akin to card advantage. So what we can see here is another player just basically, player 3, spiked the oil price and proceeded to sell a bunch more oil, and so they made more profits based off last profits. Arguably, whether that's better or worse, it's hard to decide than the first player's turn, but they managed to continue to capitalize on their current advantage. At this point, we can see a very large turn of an engine going. Basically, one player is sort of fishing for a sabotage to the deck, and they're using combo cards that sort of negate each other's losses to sort of basically be able to play more cards and like continuously cycle through. However, engines are not positive sum, they're zero sum, so it needs to be positive sum in some way. There needs to be a card or something they're looking for or doing or continuing to be able to build actions throughout the turn. So this is sort of an engine going through. So the next 6 minutes are simply the end of the game. The oil price does get spiked, and we use a combination of blackmail cards and diplomacy cards. So essentially, when it comes down to those last turns where missiles and ICBMs have been generated, it comes down to skipping the other player's turn and stopping what the player is doing. So that's very important to do, actually. And so eventually, I did end it early because obvious what player was going to win after that sort of spike was allowed. And obviously, it's on the mistakes in quotations of the other players to basically stop them earlier once you see that plan starting to roll out. However, that was obviously not possible. So this basically allowed the first player to get a large advantage and blackmail and stop the other players from playing, and basically be able to win the game through a combination of attack and reaction cards.